Hi, I'm Christian Triola, author of The Missing Method for Guitar books. And in this video, I'm going to show you everything you need to know to understand how to use your capo. So to start off, let me tell you a story. The first capo I had was dangerous. In fact, I have it right here. I found it hidden in the closet. Check this thing out. It's got all these crazy teeth on it. And you can really do some damage with this thing. Now, how it worked is you would just take the capo, put it across the strings, pull this thing up, and clamp it in place. But you want to get your fingers out of the way quickly so you wouldn't rub up against one of these edges. Now, the edges aren't super sharp, but they're sharp enough to be dangerous. So I was so glad when I discovered that there were a lot of different types of capos out there. In fact, the one that we're going to take a look at today is this kind. They call it a trigger capo because you just pull it like a trigger, put it over your strings, and you're in good shape. So one of the things that you want to know about that is when you do put it on your strings, make sure that it's straight and right next to the fret as if it were your finger. Because if not, I've seen some people with capos kind of at an angle like this, and it's not quite the same. You can sound a little out of tune doing it that way. So the cleaner it is on your guitar, the better sound you're going to get. So do keep that in mind. Now the capo itself, the word capo, comes from the Italian word meaning head or top. And so what this means is that it becomes the head or the top of the guitar. It becomes the nut, essentially. So this is a movable nut. So as you move it up the neck, you're clamping those strings so whatever you play is going to sound higher. So here's how it works. Once you have it in place, and I just randomly chose the 3rd fret, just to put it there. What you want to do is make sure it's straight on, like I said, and also too, make sure none of your strings are bent. In fact, at a glance here, it looks like it's good. Sometimes, a string might be pushed out of the way, so it's bent a little bit, and again, that will cause it to sound out of tune. So you just clamp it on as cleanly as you can, no bent strings, and you're in good shape. So once it's in place, you can now play any open chord that you already know, and it's going to give you a different sound. So here's what I mean. Let's say, for example, I wanted to strum the chord G, just without the capo on. We know that all those notes that I just played create the chord that we call G major. So let's say I throw the capo back on that 3rd fret just as an example, and I can take that and play a G shape again. But you can hear, obviously, it's higher. But what chord is that? The name of that chord is now B flat major. Now, the reason I know that is I'm taking a look at the instrument, and I can see on the last string, my 3rd finger here is on the note B flat. Just like if I were back here on the chord G major, my 3rd finger would be on the note G on the last string. So knowing what note that is on the last string allows me to know what chord I'm playing when I have the capo clamped down. Now, another thing you can do with that, which is pretty interesting, is let's say you're in the key of G, just as an example, and you're going to play the 3 main chords in the key of G. So that's G major, C major, and of course D major, or D7 if you want to. But we're just going to keep it with 3 major chords, G, C, D. Now let's say we throw the capo on. We're going to go to that 3rd fret again. And now we're going to play those same shapes. So first we have the G shape, followed by the C shape, followed by the D shape. And you can hear it kind of wants to go back to G, if that was an open position to be a G, of course. But what do we have now? We have higher sounding chords. We already know that first one is B flat. So that means the next one is going to be the next major chord in the key of B flat. And we know that is the 4th chord, starting with the B flat. So B flat, C, D, E flat. So that's 4. E flat is that 2nd chord. Now to check that, take a look at where your 3rd finger falls. It's right here on what would be fret number 6 on the 5th string. And that, of course, is the note E flat. So that's going to also work with the D-shaped chord. We're playing what looks like a D, but we know that it is no longer a D. So up here, if we take the capo off for a second, you know that on a D chord, we have that fourth string open is the root of the chord. That's the note D. So that means whatever note is under the capo at the 3rd fret is going to be the name of that chord. So you can see here, it's right on the note F, 3rd fret, 4th string. So that means we have an F major chord. So we have now changed keys, G, E flat, F, back to B flat. So we're able to change keys very quickly and to a flat key. Because let's face it, if you're playing flat chords up in this open position, you can do it. I mean, here's a B flat chord, here's an E flat chord, here's an F. It all works up there, but it's a lot more difficult, especially that E flat isn't necessarily a finger-friendly chord to grab. So the capo just makes it a lot easier to get those chords a lot faster. So in order to figure out what chords you're playing when you have the capo down, there's a couple ways to do that. One is to know the notes of the open chords and know which one is the root, and then translate that like I did earlier in the video. Another way is to simply know the notes of your fretboard, and of course that takes quite a long time to get used to, but by knowing things like power chords or knowing bar chords, where your hand is going up and down the fretboard anyway, if you know those notes, sometimes that can be useful too. In fact, you can think of the capo as a bar. Instead of using your finger, you would use the capo. You know, for example, let's say I have the chord E major. If I just use a bar chord at the 3rd fret, this chord here that I'm playing is essentially the E major shape with the 1st finger down. So once again, I just put the capo on the 3rd fret, play E major, and we have a G major chord. So there's a lot of different ways that you can figure out what chords you're actually playing when you're playing those capo chords. Another great way of learning all those is to simply have a guide that shows you, okay, I have my capo on the 2nd fret, what chords are available to me? And one book that does that is Guitar Chord Master Beyond Basic Chords. Now in this book, it's more than just learning how to use your capo and kind of figuring out what chord is which, but you can also learn major and minor 7th chords, 9th chords, and a lot of other chord voicings that a lot of beginners skip because they seem too complicated. But this book gives you a chance to practice those more complex chords. It gives you a chance to practice with the capo and actually learn what those chords are that you're playing. So I hope this video has helped you get a better understanding of how to use your capo and what it's good for. It helps you change keys quickly. It gives you familiar voicings to chords that are harder to get in open position. And it'll just kind of open up your playing in a lot of ways. Now, do keep in mind there are other types of capos out there. What I used in this video was simply a 6-string capo, goes across all the strings. There are some that are only partial capos. So when you go to buy a capo, watch out for that. Make sure you get just a traditional 6-string capo. What you want to do then is take some songs that you already know, slap that capo on in different spots on the neck, and see what sounds you can discover in versions of the song that you can create just by knowing how to use your capo. So I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to this channel, and if you enjoyed the video, please give us a like. And one more thing too, before you go, I'd highly recommend you join our mailing list. I really appreciate it when people do that, and we always send you the latest information from the Missing Method for Guitar books. So I'll see you in the next video.